Welcome everyone to this new episode of the Privacy Rules Privacy Espresso series. Today we are going to have an external guest together with us. His name is Muneeb Imran, and he is a privacy and AI governance expert with great experience over 15 years in the Middle East. And I have the pleasure of having Muneeb together with us to discuss about ethical AI and governance in a series of episodes that starts today but will be followed by at least another two. So first of all, Muneeb, thanks a lot for being with us today and for being in this call.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, Alessandro, for inviting me for this conversation. I think the ethical AI is an extremely important topic, and I'm glad that you chose to have conversation around it.
Thank you very much, Muneeb. And let's go to discuss topic of today, which is why legitimacy and transparency is pivotal for ethical AI. So what's the relevance of legitimacy and transparency on it? So the first question I have to understand what we're talking about is what defines legitimacy in an AI system?
So the discourse around the entire AI governance, AI at large, has been driven from the technological standpoint, and it's centered around the value that the AI can create, and definitely has immense value to create and disrupt the value proposition within the society. But the objective around the AI governance is to basically change the lens and consider AI to be a socio-technical system and not just the technological system through which you are going to extract certain value out of it. So it's pivotal that we begin by changing the lens around AI and seeing it as a socio-technical system. So that's the first and the foremost thing that I want to highlight over here. The second thing is that, societies need an ethical and a moral order to survive and thrive. If a society does not have, if the moral values and the ethical values begin to erode in the society, all the technological progress that the society has made over the years, it begins to collapse. That's the very fundamental idea behind ethical AI that needs to be taken into account. Now the question comes that, okay, from whose ethics are we talking about? So ethics, there are ethical and the moral values that are often, coded in the form of the religious scriptures and in the ideas that have been put forward by the intelligentsia. So they reflect how we ought to live together and how we are going to basically use technology or any other thing that helps to basically enhance life experience of the human race. Now, when it comes to legitimacy and transparency in AI, we all understand that AI has significant capacity to uplift the human experiences and the human society through various opportunities that it offers. However, these opportunities also have some associated risks, which could come either in the form of privacy harms, the group harms, and the various environmental harms as well that may come along with the AI adoption. The question that comes is that, when these challenges creep up, and when these risks are going to be posed by the AI, and if these risks are not thoroughly examined, in my opinion, the right now the AI adoption primarily stems from the obsession and the desire to adopt AI as soon as possible, because there is a lurking fear that, if we don't adopt AI, we are probably going to be left behind. It has an element of truth to it. However, the thing is that if the risks associated with AI, if they are not thoroughly examined and materialized, who's going to be held accountable and responsible for those harms? That is where the legitimacy and the transparency concept comes in. And one of the common idea that is often, spoken about when it comes to the legitimacy and the transparency part usually comes around the opaque decision making that has been often talked about, and the opaque decision making which is primarily empowered by the black box algorithms, where the algorithms are churning out certain outputs, and the reason behind those outputs is not properly determined. What were the variables that actually led to that kind of an output to be churned out? So when you have these black box algorithms that lead to opaque decision making, they basically erode the transparency aspect of the decision making. And when the transparency is diminished, legitimacy comes into question. So these are the things that come into question when it comes to the transparency. It's very important for in order to ensure transparency and legitimacy that the individual should be able to understand how we reached out to a certain conclusion.
Yeah.
Okay, if that conclusion was inappropriate or was incorrect or it was based on false assumptions, do we have a mechanism or a channel or an avenue through which we could seek out a remedy against that decision or against that exercise of power? Because remember, a conclusion or a decision that has been made, that's essentially an exercise of power, either by an organization or by an individual or by an entity. So these are things that need to be taken into account when it comes to legitimacy.
Thank you very much, Muneeb. It's impressive the amount of topics that you can open up by starting from just one as legitimacy, which gives us an hint on the complexity of what we are talking about. You've been, sharing complex concept like automated decision making around AI. We've been speaking about transparency and legitimacy. One of the key points on these that is clear to me is the need for strong communication. How do you explain all those things to non-technical audiences in particular? So, in your experience, how can organization effectively explain AI decision to non-technical people?
Absolutely valid question. I think whether you have the AI or you do not have the AI, you need to first understand and go back into the very genesis and the rationale behind a certain process. Why a process is there in the first place, and what is the objective associated with that process? What objectives do we want to achieve out of that process? Once we have determined that, the second thing that needs to be carried out is to lay out how that process is being carried out end to end, and which entity and which division within your own organization is involved around that process. And what do they contribute? I mean, what level of decision making takes place when these parties are involved? Laying out this entire process down, it helps to ensuring transparency within the organization. And then, because if you do not understand how this process is working in a manual manner, leave aside whether the AI is there or not, you cannot really explain the mechanism, how a decision making is taking place and what is the rationale behind the certain outputs. So when you have this kind of hygiene within the organization around the process engineering, it helps to basically understand why a certain output was reached out. Now, just to be precise, you spoke about providing the explanation to the non-technical audiences. I think if you have a fair bit of understanding around how a certain process is structured, then the same has to be reflected into the AI as well. So if you understand how the technical mechanism is working behind the AI and how the algorithm is designed, that helps to explain to the non-technical audiences. And then you should be able to, you should have certain institutional mechanisms through which you can even provide them the customer support or the aid that could help them, that why certain variables are leading to certain outcomes. So these are the things, institutional mechanisms that can be created over there. Sometimes just having the high level explanations could be beneficial. It's a difficult thing to basically navigate, but again, it goes back to the very fundamental hygiene that you have created around your organization, that how certain processes are basically getting carried out, and once they are automated or once they are taken into the AI realm, how they are basically churning out certain outputs around that process.
Perfect, Muneeb. I hear something that sounds familiar to any privacy professional, meaning that having a clear structure in mind before starting doing things and having experts that know properly what they are doing is normally the only way to then be effective in explaining certain steps. So while I was listening you speaking, I was thinking a lot about what we know as privacy by design, or having proper mechanisms to do things is exactly the same approach. Of course, we're speaking about something different in some parts, but still we're speaking about similar types of approach. In this regard, and in your experience, which are the, let's say, technical privacy challenges to AI transparency?
Well, I believe that organizations are still in the infancy stage for establishing privacy, especially in certain jurisdictions, and even the understanding around what constitutes as personal data, and how our rights as an individual are basically defined by the personal data. I mean, these things are new to many jurisdictions, in my opinion, and I think this will lead to a case where if organization is too early in adopting AI, privacy is going to become an outright casualty out of this, because there might be a desperation lurking. I still sense that there is a desperation in many organizations, and sometimes there is a desperate need to basically adopt the AI, a genuine need, I would say, not the desperate one, a genuine need to adopt AI. But in pursuit of AI adoption, if the privacy program or if the privacy hygiene is very poor, privacy is going to become an outright casualty, in my opinion. So, and again, I think it's important to reiterate or reinforce this fundamental idea that data is one of the raw materials that is going to basically fuel the AI growth and the AI adoption. I understand that the computational power that it needs, the GPUs and the infrastructure, I understand that's hugely significant. But again, all that tech stack which is going to be there, which is going to act as a critical component for the AI adoption, remember that the tech stack itself is a dumb device. The real intelligence is coming from the data on which you're going to basically create the algorithms, the data on which you're going to basically develop the models and train those models. So if that data is not appropriate, or if the quality of data is questionable, or if it has been procured from sources that were either illegal, or if the data was not representative, that could lead to significant privacy harms, in my opinion.
Perfect, Muneeb. Thanks a lot. We have just a little time, but there is just one last point that was very interesting to me. Also, listening to you, and you were saying there is a need for AI. So we definitely want to make sure that is properly used. One of the key points that has emerged recently is the so-called ethic washing. Maybe we can explain a bit what we are talking about, and my question to you would be, how can organizations prevent these to happen and to endanger their transparency efforts?
Let me tell you, I am a person who believes in systems. I believe that, eventually it's not the technology that helps to prevent the ethical washing, and, brilliant individuals create systems. If you do not have systems in place, do not expect that just a single compliance check would make sure that it does not lead to an ethics washing and all this kind of thing. I think it begins right from the decision making at the top, at the board of directors, and then the executive management. But remember that the board members are not supposed to implement the ethical practices. They are only supposed to set the governance objectives around the ethical and the responsible AI. I think the role of the audit function is extremely important. And again, I see the audit role being the most pivotal in this one, because of the fact that they should be able to validate the practices of the organizations and the mechanisms that have been instilled within the organization. And this requires them to have a much broader understanding from the social element right down to the technical element, which means that they have to look beyond the information security, information technology. They have to see things across technology stack, from privacy law, from social sciences, from the overall governance perspective. If an auditor is not equipped with dealing with all these things, then what will happen is that basically the ethical washing will become so prevalent, and all these compliance checks would effectively become meaningless. But again, as we have seen, the AI governance frameworks are basically coming up now. In my opinion, it's incumbent upon people like myself and the others who are operating in the field of privacy and the responsible AI that they need to create systems. Systems make sure that there is ethical practice embedded across the organization. The one or two solutions will not basically prevent this window dressing that is easier to basically implement across the products and the services.
Perfect, Muneeb. Thanks a lot. I'm just sorry that we are running out of our time, but we have another episode coming out next week. So I would like to thank you very much for being with us today, and to all our listeners as well, of course.
Thank you. Bye.